What's happening, guys? So I've got to ask the question, is it Hellcat or is it six pack? And this is a question that a lot of you guys are going to have to answer, especially if you're planning on shelling out money for either one of the new all-wheel drive inline six hot rods coming down the pike from Dodge, or if you're still thinking about purchasing a either brand new or let's say a used Hellcat, say one with some light mileage, something in like the $60,000 range. Which one do you pick? Right now, the walking around assumption is that that new high output variant of the Charger is going to come in somewhere around $65,000. So if money is equal, which car do you pick? Well, let's break that down for just a second. First of all, the newer car is presumably lighter. It's going to be a bit better of a coefficient of drag as well. So lighter, slipperier, maybe not quite as powerful, but power to weight ratio is what we're more concerned with. And along with that is traction with all-wheel drive. Well, compare that to the Hellcat. Lots of power, lots of torque, but it's heavy. It's got a terrible coefficient of drag, and, well, quite frankly, it does not hook up on the street. So on the street, you got to give it to the new six-pack. That car in all-wheel drive form from a stoplight is going to up and run away from any Hellcat or any Hellcat variant, really, that hasn't been breathed on significantly. I get it. Trackhawks and Durangos are fast. This thing's going to be right there with them. And again, power to weight ratio looks like it might fall into the favor of the Charger. But what about in modified form? If you're buying one of these cars to modify, your first argument is, well, I can throw X number of dollars, X number of parts at a Hellcat and get it into the mid nines relatively easily. But again, you're assuming mid nines because you're assuming it's going to be on a drag strip. Guys, drag strips are going away. We got drag strips closing down at an alarming rate. So telling me that a car is a 9.5 second car does nothing for me, because unless it can do it on the street reliably, it doesn't exist. It's a fantasy at that point. So I'm not here to talk about what it could do. I'm talking about what it will do in the real world. Granted, the operating system for the new six-pack cars hasn't been cracked, but you all know what the formula looks like when you start to tickle the ivories on any of these six-cylinder turbos. 80, 90, 100 foot-pounds of torque is about as easy as just a few movements of the fingers on a keyboard. The same amount of horsepower comes along with it. So now we're talking extremely similar horsepower numbers, but with all-wheel drive and lighter, slippier through the air, and not really that far off in terms of pricing. So from just an objective point of view, you've got to hand it to the new six-pack cars. You can say what you will about the Hellcat variants, the noise that the thing makes, and there's nothing quite like a positive displacement supercharger screaming and all of that. But you can say all of that with stars in your eyes, but those same starry eyes are going to be watching the taillights of one of these new six-cylinder turbo cars run out of your life. And I'm just curious as to where the V8 guys stand with that. Have you just kind of grown to accept that? And even if the argument is, well, let's catch them from a roll, guys, we all know that the Hellcat platform is the last platform that you want to try to play with folks on the highway with. I mean, let's face it, there's naturally aspirated Coyote builds that give Hellcats all they can handle and then some. Which brings me to another point, roll racing in general, or which vehicle do you see at Texas 2K? A lot of people say, well, I'd rather have a V8, V8s or this and that. Okay, it's great, but how many V8 offerings do you see actually dominating at 2K? I mean, every once in a while you'll see something LS powered with all the turbos in the world and nitrous and jet fuel and rockets and everything else making a case for itself. But basically, if it's not Coyote and turbo, it doesn't really have a place in that environment as a V8. The Lambos, of course, are V10s, so are the Vipers, but your Supras, and I mean old school Mark IV, your GTRs, well, all of them are six cylinders, but the latest are Vs, the earliest are inlines. You see where this is going. The nastiest cars are all inline turbos. And for a certain group of guys that come from a certain era, that's what we associate with fast. You start talking to Cold War kids about what they remember as fast, and it's the Supra comes up first. A lot of these import hot rods are what we're going to start talking about. We just were told a V8 was never going to exist again, and so we all started to focus on these smaller boosted engines. And well, when they say there's no replacement for displacement, there is. There's a couple. One of them is RPM, the other is boost. Combine the two. Work with what you got. And that's why so many folks like myself are salivating over the prospect of this car hitting the market. There's a lot to look forward to. There's potentially a lot of upside, assuming the engine will handle modification. But the point of all of this is that we are coming to the end of an era. Chapters, if you will, have been read, and the book is being closed on the Hemi V8. It's had a great run, but something has got to take its place. And since we're not going to get a dual overhead cam V8, a la a Mopar variant of a Coyote style engine, this is what we have to work with. And if what we've seen so far from a performance envelope has anything to do with how the new Wagoneer runs, well, we're in for quite a treat. My only concern, though, is durability. You see, the Hellcat, say what you will about it, heavy, bad coefficient of drag, okay, whatever. But it's built like a tank too. Tanks are heavy, and they're heavy because they can withstand a beating, or heavy to withstand a beating, I should say, the same way that the Hellcat is. Durability is that car's calling card. My own Hellcat had hundreds of passes at the drag strip, not counting test hits. So when you start to boil it down in that respect, there's one quality that you just can't put on paper. And it's durability, it's reliability, it's knowing that that car is going to bring you home if you take the thing out and you're basically going through the use, misuse, and abuse of what you've built. We don't know that quite yet about the Hurricane. It just hasn't proven itself yet. So in the short term, you got to give it to the Hellcat. If you're not racing it, if you're only buying it as a car, you love the sound of the thing, you want the theater to go along with it, the Hellcat is an incredibly difficult proposition to beat. But if you're looking at this objectively and by the numbers, and you're looking to cover 0 to 60 times, 60 to 130 times, you know that once operating systems get cracked, that car could potentially be a monster. Well, for you guys, spend the extra money and get that six-pack. And with that, guys, post up your comments. Let me know what you think. We'll catch you on the next one. Adios.